Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Ignition Time. Welcome to our channel, everyone. This is Dr. Nitin Chhoda. I want you to know that I really appreciate our entire Ignition Time community. You guys keep me going every single day. To be honest with you, making YouTube videos is a ton of work. There's a lot of research that goes into these videos. Our video production team is phenomenal, but you keep me motivated. You keep me excited to do this every single day. And I thank you. I thank you. Let's just jump right in. What is the biggest risk, folks? The biggest risk to the US economy? Here's the headline of an article on your screen from the Wall Street Journal. The Federal Reserve says that the US public health system is amongst the biggest near-term risks to the financial system. In fact, a lot of asset prices, including home values, including, as you know, the stock market, are at all-time highs, and investor sentiment could shift very rapidly. In other words, at this moment, everyone seems to be extremely greedy and not very fearful, folks. Yep, this is true. Here's a CNN poll on your screen right now that gives you a sense of investor sentiment. So check this out. This is pretty incredible. This is the Fear and Greed Index from CNN Business. The emotion driving the stock market right now is extreme greed. 1 month ago, the emotion was fear. In fact, the S&P 500, the 500 biggest stocks in the stock market, is currently 7.27% above its 125-day average. Now, this is further above the average than has been typical during the last 2 years. And extreme increases like this often indicate extreme greed. So yes, folks, this is what's happening. Everyone seems to think that the music will continue playing and everyone will keep on dancing. Folks, at some point, the music is going to stop and we have to come back to reality. This stock market looks like it's on helium right now. Like I said, everyone just keeps dancing. So what is going on, folks? The potential for US public health to worsen as the pandemic continues is one of the greatest near-term risks to the entire financial system, according to the Federal Reserve. So any deterioration in the public health situation could slow down the entire economic recovery, everyone, particularly if businesses have to close down again and if supply chains are disrupted. In fact, here's what the Federal Reserve said in its semi-annual financial stability report. Asset prices may be vulnerable to significant declines should risk appetite fall, progress on containing the virus disappoint, or the recovery stall. Now, there is some good news because our banks are stronger than ever. So the report also said this. Little evidence exists of widespread erosion in mortgage underwriting standards or speculative practices. However, with valuations at high levels, house prices should be particularly sensitive to shocks. So folks, what is happening here is everything again is at a sky high value, and the concern from the Federal Reserve is that, hey, things could indeed go down. In fact, during the financial crisis of 2007 to 2009, the collapse of residential property values actually caused overextended homeowners to default on their mortgages, and this resulted in large-scale losses for banks and other financial firms, which led to a decline in share prices and led to a very long recession. Now, the longest economic expansion has actually followed this pandemic, and it has actually put the average American household in a relatively strong situation, and banks are actually in a very good situation right now. In fact, stocks like Bank of America are again at all-time highs. Now, as economic activity actually collapsed at the start of the pandemic in March of last year, the government, as you know, used its borrowing capacity to step in with trillions of dollars through the CARES Act and later through the American Rescue Plan and now through the Build Back Better agenda to try and prop up the American economy. However, Federal Reserve officials have said that they have serious concerns about the fact that everything is indeed overpriced. In fact, at a recent Federal Reserve meeting, the staff actually said that there were a lot of vulnerabilities to the financial system, and they said that rapidly increasing home prices meant that valuations were stretched. So, let me know, do you think valuations are stretched? Has your home increased in value? Well, first of all, do you have any stocks? And if you do, have your stocks increased in value? I want you to know that I create this channel for the everyday American, for our fellow Americans, for those who are trying to live the American dream. And for us, it's not really about home values, and it's not really about stock market prices and whether your stocks have gone up in value. It's about the price of milk. It's about the price of eggs. It's about the price of bread. And it's about paying rent. I want you to let me know in the comment section below whether you agree or disagree with this thesis that public health is the number one risk to the United States economy. In other words, if this pandemic comes back, and let's hope it doesn't. And by the way, I'm fairly confident that we have this under control now. And there are two reasons why I feel so confident. Firstly, more and more people are getting vaccinated. And number two, Pfizer actually announced a COVID pill. In other words, it's a pill that, when taken within 3 days of developing any symptoms, actually results in an 89% effectiveness in dealing with this virus. That is absolutely huge, because those who don't want to get vaccinated can now take this pill. So popping a pill is a lot easier, is a lot more amenable for individuals than getting jabbed. So let me know what you think in the comment section below, folks. Let me know what you think. Please click the like button. Please click subscribe. Please enable notifications. Do you believe that public health is the number one risk to the US economy? And do you believe that if this pandemic comes back, that we will go back to square one? Let's hope that doesn't happen. Again, I'm starting to feel confident with every passing day, in large part because of this COVID pill from Pfizer, which I believe is a game changer. And I personally believe that we can now declare the pandemic behind us. But as you can imagine, the Federal Reserve, their job is to be cautious. Their job is to try and sound the alarm so we don't get too complacent. And that is what they're doing here. I believe that the only thing that can hold back the American economy is you and me, is the average American. We need to make sure we go out there and live our lives. We need to make sure we go out there and work. We need to make sure we go out there and live our lives and resume lives. We need to get back to our normal lives, and we need to put this entire horrific pandemic, the psychological and the physical manifestations of this pandemic, behind us. Thank you so much for watching. Follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is ignition_time. That's ignition_time. This right here is my Twitter feed. You'll be able to keep up with all the latest news stories I follow on Twitter. By the way, speaking of Twitter, I actually tweeted out this video. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, seems to think that the vaccine was an option even before it was invented. Here's what I mean. He's talking about how the situation was more than a year ago when we were right in the middle of the pandemic, and he's comparing that with today's situation, which involves getting a jab with the vaccine. I have news for Ron DeSantis. I guess taking the vaccine is not an option when it doesn't exist. Let's roll the tape and hear from Ron DeSantis in yet another episode of the DC Comedy Hour. We're about to see the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis saying, a year and a half ago, we started with 15 days to slow the spread. Now it's gone to get jabbed or lose your job. I guess it is a fact that COVID vaccines were not required before they existed. Let's roll the tape and watch Ron DeSantis. Let me know what you think.
A year and a half ago, we started with 15 days to slow the spread, and now it's gone to get jabbed or lose your job. And today's OSHA rule, very long time coming, we were waiting for it, that was issued. If you look at it, here it is. It's almost 500 pages. And so we're supposed to be a government of laws, not a government of men. This is 500 pages of a government of a bureaucracy, a government that is being run by executive edict, not in accordance with the typical constitutional processes. And the state of Florida is going to respond, and we will combat the OSHA rule. As soon as it's published, the state of Florida will be joining with Georgia and Alabama, as well as private plaintiffs, to file suit. This is a rule that is not consistent with the Constitution and is not legally authorized through congressional statutes.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.